Good evening, everyone. We have started this evening's town hall. We're going to let participants or attendees trickle in. It takes a few moments, so just bear with us, and we'll begin momentarily. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for making time to be with us this evening. This is our 5th virtual town hall in anticipation of opening the fall 2020 school year, which is just 1 week away. My name is Eston Melton. I'm the Executive Director of Information Services, and I'll moderate tonight's virtual town hall. We have a double header this evening, so we will begin this evening with a town hall around special services and programs. And then at 5 o'clock, we'll transition to a town hall around technology and infrastructure for this season's virtual learning. That technology session will be at a different webinar link, so we'll need to leave this room, so to speak, and go next door to start that one up at 5 o'clock. Thank you all again for joining us. We hope the information we provide will alleviate at least some of the stress and anxiety you're experiencing. Although we will not be able to directly ask questions in a webinar Q&A live, the link to submit questions is still open, as well as the opening 2020@csdecatur.net email inbox. CSD has 3 pillars that keep our work focused on our mission and vision. These 3 pillars are advancing racial equity, accelerating student learning, and building and sustaining a positive school climate. We believe that our work in these 3 core areas, whether it happens in person or virtually, will result in helping our students be their best, achieve their dreams, and make the world a better place. Tonight, we'll review some essential and recommended tools and practices. We'll share with you some avenues. Oh, pardon me, I'm reading for the 5 o'clock script. Tonight's agenda right now, we'll start with an introduction of our student support program leaders. Each program will provide an overview of how the program will operate during virtual learning, followed by some common questions and answers for each area. If time permits, we'll see if any additional questions have come in that we can respond to tonight. And finally, we will share where to find more information and what next steps we are taking as a district to plan for in-person instruction as soon as possible. Also, please know that teachers from all of these programs were included in the district-wide virtual Vanguard team, so their input on instructional implications could be included in the development of the district's virtual parent handbooks, virtual learning handbooks. From district communications to our parent and student surveys, CSD has purposely been inclusive and consistent. Feedback from community surveys has been disseminated to each department so that they could review what was applicable to them and be able to make adjustments as needed. We will continue this format of engagement because we know that students with special learning needs should not be viewed as separate. They are always general education students first and foremost, with layers of support added. As you can see from our lineup of presenters tonight, there are several programs and support options for students. To participate in some of these, students must meet eligibility requirements established by either the state of Georgia or federal statute. Parents, please know that at every level of planning, the various program leaders have been included in determining how we can safely open the 2020 school year and the implications for instructional programming. And these district leaders, to whom I will shortly hand over this presentation, are Dr. Beam, Director of Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Huddleston, Executive Director of Equity and Student Support, Francis Holt, our Executive Director of State and Federal Programs, Ben Knable, School Psychology and 504 Coordinator, Willie Washington, Federal and Title Programs Coordinator, Frank DeFilippo, Special Education Coordinator, and Tiffany Martin, also a Special Education Coordinator. And now I am happy to turn it over to Dr. Beam, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, to talk about MTSS and Gifted. Dr. Beam.
Hello, thank you for joining us tonight. Our MTSS coordinators for the district are Mima Simmons and Julie McFadden, and they help the MTSS leads at each school to coordinate services for students that may need additional supports. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Support. It is a general education program where we work collaboratively to maximize student achievement and appropriate behavior. We try to catch potential academic and behavioral challenges early through implementation of interventions on specific skills, and we do frequent checks on student progress. Under the MTSS umbrella, we work to support the whole child through all of our acronyms that you can see here. The PBIS, which is our Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, Response to Intervention, our student support teams, student mental health services, and wraparound support services for families. Tier 1 instruction is our educational services that all students receive. Students that were receiving Tier 2 and 3 interventions or supports through EIP and REP through back in the spring will continue to receive those services in the fall. We will be monitoring and working with teachers as well to ensure that supports are consistent with the needs in the virtual environment. Our gifted coordinator for City Schools of Decatur is Ms. Kristen Gibbons, and we did receive some questions about gifted services. Many of those questions were submitted were about whether or not gifted services will be offered in the during the virtual learning period, as well as one question about why, and then lots of questions about how services will be delivered. The answer is that yes, gifted services will continue to be provided during virtual learning. Gifted services are required by law in the state of Georgia for students who have been identified as gifted. Gifted services during virtual learning will continue much in the same way that they were in the physical school building. Gifted specialists will continue to collaborate weekly with classroom teachers to differentiate academic instruction and tasks for gifted and high ability learners. This may look like small group instruction, tiered tasks and assignments, extensions, and alternate projects. Gifted resource services will be offered to students in grades K through 8. At the elementary schools, the gifted resource will be provided during the daily intervention block. At Renfro Middle School, the gifted resource will continue to be scheduled as a 12-week connections course once per year. The high school will continue to offer the previously scheduled advanced content courses, AP, IB, and gifted directed study courses as an additional vehicle for gifted services. If you have questions about your child's specific gifted services, please contact the gifted specialist at your child's school. Your gifted specialist will continue to be your first point of contact in regards to gifted services specific to your child during the virtual learning period. One question was submitted to ask if your child would lose eligibility if students withdraw from the program. A student can have up to a 1-year break according to Georgia policy, according to the Georgia Department of Education. After 1 year of being out of services, of being removed from services, the student would have to be reevaluated upon return. Finally, multiple questions were submitted about assessment and evaluation for gifted services. We are not able to assess for gifted eligibility virtually. At this time, all gifted eligibility or gifted evaluations will be postponed until the district deems it safe to return to complete in-person evaluations. We do intend to resume system-wide universal screeners such as the COGAT testing as well as gifted evaluations once we are able to return in person. So next we will hear from Dr. Lillie Huddleston, our Executive Director of Equity and Student Support.
Thank you, Dr. Beam. Good evening, everyone. Next, I will provide you with information about Section 504 and school psychology. Section 504 is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities. Section 504 ensures that the child with a disability has equal access to an education. Under Section 504, if appropriate, students may receive accommodations or modifications. Unlike the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, Section 504 does not require a public school to provide an individualized education program, or IEP, that is designed to meet a child's unique needs and provide the child with educational benefit. We have received several questions about whether or not 504 plans would be implemented in the virtual environment. So similar to our approach, when we move to virtual learning in the spring, 504 plans will be implemented. At the end of last school year, 504 teams reviewed and revised plans as needed to be responsive to the virtual classroom setting. The reviewed or revised plans will be in place for the beginning of this school year, and all 504 plan meetings will be held virtually. The virtual setting naturally provides many of the supports commonly identified in 504 plans, such as a more flexible work schedule, the ability to work in a quiet environment with limited distraction, the ability for students and parents to structure and organize work, and the ability for students, teachers, and parents to constantly monitor progress. As outlined in this slide, all students with disabilities are protected from discrimination under Section 504. Certain students require accommodations to have access to the curriculum commensurate with their non-disabled peers. Several parents have reached out to learn more about the eligibility process in the virtual environment. 504 review and reevaluation meetings will be held virtually. 504 teams may consider initial eligibility for 504 based upon referral concerns that have emerged during the virtual learning period. As a part of the eligibility process, private evaluations, medical reports, parent reports, history of performance, and current data captured during the virtual learning period will be considered. If the student requires face-to-face direct assessment, the initial or reevaluation may proceed if consistent with the district timelines for in-person meetings and safety protocols are in place. The Equity and Student Support Department includes school psychology. During virtual learning, school psychologists will continue to participate in multidisciplinary team meetings virtually. They will also provide academic and behavioral consultation. In-person psychological evaluations are currently paused until the district determines that evaluations can move forward with safety protocols. School psychologists will be facilitating C-learning sessions on Wellness Wednesday, and they'll also be developing other activities to provide support for mental health and well-being for students, staff, and parents. So in summary, 504 plans will continue to be implemented in the virtual environment. If you have any questions or concerns about the implementation of current 504 plans or evaluation, please contact your local school 504 coordinator. Contact information is available on your school's website. If you have additional questions after reaching out to your local school coordinator, you can reach out to Mr. Ben Knable, who is our district 504 and school psychology coordinator. Next, we will transition into a discussion of state and federal programs led by our Executive Director of State and Federal Programs, Mrs. Frances Holt.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Dr. Huddleston, for that introduction. As some of you may know, I previously supervised the special education program only, but now I have the honor and privilege of supervising the ESOL and title programs in addition to special education. So before we start talking about special education, I would like Ms. Willie Washington, our Title and Federal Programs Coordinator, to review the guidance regarding students in the ESOL and Title programs. Willie?
Ms. Washington, you're still muted.
Thank you, Eston. Hello, everyone. Glad that you're here with us this evening. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a brief overview of our service for our ESOL program and our Title I program during our virtual setting. ESOL, of course, stands for English as Speakers of Other Languages. So for both our ESOL programs and our Title I program, based on the established teacher schedules and using the established Google Classrooms, these endorsed teachers will meet virtually with their identified student groups, working with students as outlined in the student intervention plan. They will meet virtually with the general education teacher in the established general education Google Classrooms, and they will assist those students based on the student intervention plan. They will provide accommodations and direct services as indicated. And for qualification purposes, ESOL qualification screenings will be done based on students that are identified by the appropriate Godot home language survey. ESOL program will use the established Godot timelines for administering those screeners, and all of the ESOL qualification screeners will be conducted virtually using the Godot approved WIDA remote screeners. Title I students will be identified and selected based on the Godot established Title I student selection criteria, and working in conjunction with myself, the Title I school staff will complete the Title I student selection process and will notify parents of that selection. Thank you, Paris and Francis, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Willie. Okay, so regarding special education, one thing we know for sure is that IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was not built for a pandemic. But we also know that the services provided to students with IEPs are critical, and they have not been waived. So since March, we have all been frantically and diligently looking for a way forward in light of these circumstances. So for the past 4 months, the team has reviewed guidance, trying to find that right direction for CSD. Some of the guidance that we have reviewed includes the Georgia Department of Education, or Godot, as Willie referred to it. We reviewed the Special Education Restart Guidance document dated July 30th, just last week. All of the documents and resources posted on their website regarding distance remote learning. Again, special education website at the state level. All of the documents and resources posted at the DOE website for special education district supports in COVID-19. We've read and reviewed the questions and answers on providing services to children with disabilities during COVID-19 outbreak document dated March 2020 from the Office of Special Education Rehabilitative Services, also known as OSERS. It's a national U.S. Department of Education. And then also from the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, OSERS again, the March 16th and March 21st. First, the fact sheet on addressing the risk of COVID-19 in schools while protecting the civil rights of students, and the supplemental fact sheet addressing the risk of COVID-19 in preschool, elementary, and secondary schools while serving students with disabilities. Last but not least, we have watched hours and attended hours of webinars provided by the Georgia Council of Administrators of Special Education, known as GCASE, the Council of Administrators for Special Education, CASE, the national level, and also the for Exceptional Children, also known as CEC. These entities have provided other special education leaders, special education attorneys, and different types of webinars on instructional implications as well. So not just the legal pieces, but the instructional pieces. And any of you who are interested, you may visit our CSD special education website, where I have linked these guidance documents. Of course, not every webinar is there, but the guidance documents from the Georgia DOE and the U.S. Department of Education are linked there should you want to read through those. But a quick summary and overview of what we have learned and what we're going to do. I'm going to review that now and also go through some of our questions. The first question we have received is, will CSD be providing IEP services to students? Yes, we are going to do that, and we're going to do that on day one of school. This requirement is not new. It has always been in place, and we have always honored that. The IEP is a very important document, and it details for the special educators and the general educators the impact of a student's disability and how that disability manifests itself in relation to academics and behavioral needs. But just like the state and the national guidance has shown us, a FAPE, or free appropriate public education, can be appropriate and look different than what has been our traditional instructional model, the thing that we're most comfortable with and most accustomed to. What we know is that IEP goals can still be provided, instruction on those goals can still be provided, accommodations can still be implemented, and services can occur in the virtual environment. And as we saw in the spring, many students still can make progress even when receiving instruction virtually. So yes, we will be providing services again. Another question that we have received is, do we need to amend all of the IEPs, or does my child's IEP need to be amended now for virtual learning? Not necessarily. What the guidance has shown us is that we don't need to amend all IEPs solely because the district is operating under a new virtual instructional model. We will continue to write IEPs as though the student were in the building, and that is the ultimate goal. What we will do while the district is operating in the virtual instructional model, and hopefully a hybrid instructional model, our IEP teams will develop virtual learning contingency plans for every student with an IEP. These contingency plans will be a part of the student's IEP and will document how the special education services are provided during this temporary period of virtual instruction. In the development of these contingency plans, the IEP teams will engage the IEP process. The plans will detail any necessary contingencies that are needed for the student in light of these circumstances. We will have every case manager conducting these meetings. And again, these contingency plans will be viewed as, or will be a part of the student's IEP, an addendum, if you will. Parents, you will be contacted by your child's IEP case manager in the coming days and weeks. Remember, we have over 500 kids in the program, and so we're asking all of these plans to be developed very, very soon in the school year, because we know it's important for the students to have these in place and have these services in place, but our teachers are also holding meetings that they would normally hold over 9 months of the year. Okay, some people have been wondering, does the contingency plan replace the IEP? No, it does not replace the IEP. It is an extension of the IEP while the district is operating in the virtual instructional model. And so this means that when in-person traditional instruction resumes, the contingency plan will no longer be required. So let's talk a little bit more about contingency plans, because I know that's what you guys want to know about the most. And you heard me say earlier that we will engage the IEP process. What that means is, families, you will be invited to participate in a meeting of the development of this plan with your child's IEP team at their school. During that meeting, the IEP, the full-blown IEP will be there with the case manager. Those teachers will have access to that. And they will also have the general education virtual learning schedule for that child's appropriate grade level. Together, and understanding what the U.S. Department of Education said in their fax letter, that team needs to come together and make sure that that contingency plan has what it needs for that child to participate and have access to general curriculum during the period of virtual instruction. And this includes speech and language services and other related services, which are most often referred to as our therapy services. If there's any particular changes that are necessary, that should be documented on the contingency plan as well. And then what about IEP meetings? Well, we still have to hold IEP meetings in the traditional manner. The due dates are still there and the re-eligibility due dates are still in effect. So those meetings will still continue when their due date comes around, and the teams will do the annual review meeting. They will again write that IEP as though we're moving into in-person instruction, because when we do, we want to be ready. And then they will develop a new contingency plan should one be necessary at that point. When those annual review meetings are occurring, the teams will still look at all of the pieces of the IEP, present levels, goals and objectives, accommodations, services, extended school year, just as they would before COVID under normal circumstances. The criteria for extended school year has not changed. And so we will make sure that those discussions are still occurring just as they would in the past. Until further notice, all meetings will be held virtually. So your case manager will be able to send you a link, or if you prefer a phone conference, that's also an option. And then, as always, parents, if you're not able to attend or want to give permission for the team to proceed without you, you still have that option as well. What about IEP progress reports? Well, if IEPs are being implemented, we will be conducting and completing IEP progress reports. These progress reports will be, the service providers will be completing those, and the case managers will be providing those to the families as they come, as the reporting period comes about. And our department has provided guidance to the teachers on how to do electronic data binders. Lots of teachers are used to just doing folders or maybe handheld binders, but in this virtual world, we definitely want to have that data available virtually as well. Okay, and I know this is another question that we have received. What about students who experience a gap in service or a service type, or who might demonstrate recovery needs? Of course, like I've just stated, our goal is to have IEPs in place and have contingencies for those. But we do recognize that there might be, we're not perfect, and there might be some service types or that experience a gap. And so for those areas, we will be following the guidance provided by the Georgia Department of Education on the determination of compensatory services. Students with recovery needs, we will also be, when we return into the in-person environment, we will be making sure that we look at those needs and any what the data says about that. And the IEP teams will be revisiting the compensatory services discussion at that point. And then another question that we received is, how will instruction be specialized during this period of virtual learning? Some parents even indicated specific disabilities in their question. So my child has autism, how will instruction be specialized? My child has ADHD, how will that instruction be specialized? So just like in the majority of cases, and as was described for gifted, title, and ESOL, the IEP services, which is the specialization of instruction, will occur like if the student were in the in-person environment. So for example, if a student has math services on their IEP, then those services will be provided by the appropriate teacher. special education teacher, and those services will be provided during the math instructional time, which is why it is so important that the team have that general education schedule there at the development of the contingency plan. Special education providers will be providing services synchronously and asynchronously, just like the general education providers, for whatever subjects those services are required in. To access the general education, just like in in-person instruction, our special educators will be co-planning with their general education colleagues. This means they will be reviewing educational standards and the pacing for that content, and they will be reviewing IEP goals. The special education teachers will then take that content and specially design it. They will adapt the content, the methodology, or the delivery of instruction for every lesson that they teach. Again, this is what happens in the in-person environment as well. If a student has co-teaching services, then both teachers will be involved in that adaptation or of methodology, content, and delivery of instruction. Actually, the Council for Exceptional Children has a very nice video for educators on how to adapt the models of co-teaching during virtual instruction, and we are going to be sharing that with our teachers as well. If a student has small group services in the in-person environment, then the special education teacher will be providing small group services in the virtual environment. Again, we will be using synchronous and asynchronous sessions, and that applies to speech language therapy and the other therapy services as well. I'm happy to report that our special education paraprofessionals will continue to work with special education teachers, and in some cases, general education teachers, to provide supportive instructional services. And just as they do in the in-person environment, when teachers have to check in on students or pull a student one-to-one or pull a small group of students to check for understanding, do some explicit or direct instruction or progress monitoring, that will be occurring in the virtual setting as well. Additionally, I wanted to let you guys know that all of our teachers will have the resources that are typically available to them available in the virtual environment. So for example, we have some teachers that use the unique learning, which is it helps them to adapt the curriculum. They will have access to that. Other software programs and tools that we use are BoardMaker, TeachTown, CoWriter, Snap and Read, Learning Ally, Everyday Speech, just to name a few. These are not SDI, specially designed instruction, but they are there as tools for teachers to use, and we will make those available during this period as well. So as you can see, specially designed instruction, or SDI, is not a person, not a place, and not a program. But doing these three things, adapting the content, the methodology, and the delivery of the instruction, that is how the teachers specially design instruction for the students that may have autism, ADHD, dyslexia, whatever the disability is. So in conclusion, for special education, the DOE recently stated this in one of their webinars with us, and that is, and I want to say it here today, I want to remind us all that we are better together. And I don't want any family to feel isolated. I don't want you or your students to feel that way. And please do not let anyone escalate your anxiety with fear or thoughts about things that might not happen or might look different. If you see something working well, let the teacher know. If you see something that's not working so well, let the teacher know. And together, talk about that and look for other options. If something's not working well, and you might need to let the principal know as well, and that's okay. Just communicate frequently and collaborate. And I know that our teachers are ready to receive your children, and they're just ready to start getting to know them. Thank you.
Thank you, Frances, and thank you also, Willie and Kristy and Lillie. We've had a few questions come in, and one question that might be apt for Francis, Lillie, Kristy. If we homeschool, what effect, if any, would that have on a child's eligibility for special education services, 504 supports, or gifted eligibility?
Well, I can speak to gifted. So I hope that you won't choose to do that. We always appreciate you sharing your children with us, and we want the opportunity to work with you during this time. But gifted services, students can take, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, students can take a 1-year break in gifted services without having to be reevaluated, but after 1 year out of the program, they must be reevaluated to return to the gifted program.
I can go next. Regarding special education, the DOE has already given us guidance years ago on this matter, and a student does not lose eligibility, or does eligibility for an IEP does not expire just because of a deadline that may have been missed if that child's reevaluation was due during that period. If a parent opts to do homeschool or private school, when that student returns to the district, then we will look at the last eligibility and that last IEP that was on file, and we will provide as comparable of services as is available to those services that were denoted there. And then we will move quickly to doing a reevaluation and re-eligibility determination so that we can make sure that we're using the most recent profile of the student and adjust that IEP accordingly. Now, there are some cases where students do not demonstrate the educational impact that they did previously. And that is a good thing. That's what we want for all special education. And so if they don't necessarily demonstrate the educational impact that is required for eligibility in special education, that does not mean, though, that they cannot access another level of support, such as 504 support or support through the MTSS process, as what Dr. Beam explained earlier.
Thanks. Dr. Huddleston, thank you.
Hi, so it would be a similar situation with Section 504. While those particular accommodations would not apply to the homeschool environment, we would be able to reevaluate where the student is when they return to our school. And that is important to do because, as Francis mentioned, the situation may have changed in terms of what the child needs, and it might be appropriate to do a reevaluation and then continue to put those supports in place, or it may be more appropriate for them to be served through some of the other programs that are available at City Schools of Decatur.
Thank you. And I think this, the second and last one is for Francis. It's about those contingency plan meetings. You talked about them a bit. Is there anything in particular, are there any particular think-abouts that we can provide parents in preparation for those contingency plan meetings?
Very good question. I know families, you are wanting to prepare. Yes, so for those meetings, think about, first of all, your level of access to technology and internet, and I hope that you are utilizing the readiness form that our schools have sent out. So if you need a device or access to the internet, you can already start working on requesting that support. But then start, looking at what your child did back in the spring and throughout the summer. Think about, can my child use a Chromebook at all in any capacity, and what that capacity is? Can they watch a video independently? If so, about how long before their attention is taken by something else? Can they watch a video for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour? Not that we would do that for an hour, but try to gauge your child's independent level and for how long. Think about the experience from March to May and say, make a list. What worked well? What didn't work well? What specific type of strategies do you think could have been utilized that were not? Or what specific strategies were tried and did not go so well? Also, think about the accommodations. So your child's IEP currently has accommodations. A lot of them have extended time, frequent breaks. Think about those accommodations and what is really appropriate when in the home environment. I mean, clearly preferential seating is not one that would be that big of an issue because they are sitting in the seat that is available. So not so much sitting away from peers because there's no peers there. But then also think about what consultation or strategies you might need from the teacher, for the teacher or the service provider to share with you, to walk you through and how to implement that in the home so that you can be a successful partner during this time.
All right, thank you, Frances, and thank you all again for sharing a wealth of information. It's a lot to absorb, and so just as a reminder, if not later this evening, then very early tomorrow, this entire webinar recording will be available through the CSD website. So in terms of next steps, as always, please keep an eye out for communication from the district as a whole, and certainly from your child or your children's individual schools. We try to mirror those communications not only through email, but also to get them up on the school and district websites. Feel free also to contact your child's teachers and support teachers, case managers if you have one. We did publish students' homeroom or publish their schedules Wednesday, and that information is available to parents through the Infinite Campus parent portal. And be planning now, if you haven't already, on setting up a schedule that will work for your child, and whomever in the household will be working with your child to support their own learning, and work with your child on setting that up and making sure that they're aware of it too. And then lastly, it just says right here, breathe. We know that there's a lot of anxiety from our parents. There's anxiety amongst our staff too. We want this to be the best possible experience for all of our kids. We know that you all are making tremendous efforts in the home and at the workplace to support your children. And likewise, the staff here is putting in its best effort to make sure that each and every one of our students is successful. If you haven't already, please go review the pre-K2, the 3rd, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12 town halls. Students in special programs who receive support via a support plan are always general education students first. They never lose that status. And so it's very important that families know the general education expectations for their grade band. And you'll hear much more detail about those in last week's recordings. And those are available through the district website. Please also, again, monitor for district and school level communications. And know that departments are updating, department updates are included in the district and school communications, just to ensure consistent communication and to try to avoid overwhelming you. So we'll include special education related updates, 504 related updates within our broader communications out to the community. So please, if those support programs are what are supporting your kids, we're trying to embed those in the broader communications picture. But if you want specific department information, please feel free to check in with the various department websites for any updated links or information that may all be posted there. And with that, thank you all very much for coming out this evening to hear about our special programs, and thank you to staff for sticking in there. In about 15 minutes, we'll begin the second of this evening's town halls around technology and technology environment for virtual learning. And so we will see you all then. In the meantime, good night.